Hello, every pony. Quite an exciting 2 days or so after all the excitement from last night, and hope you all had a good nightmare night. Um, so we are ready for chapter 5. Well, first a few quick things. Oh yes, a few quick things. First, if you didn't see what happened last night, like maybe you were busy with the candy and whatnot, that's fine. Um, if you check out my previous video, like the one posted last night, it's a video response to Nevel Yashki's video that he posted in response to my chapter 4 reading. And a link to his video is in my video, so watch his video first, and then my video. Does that make sense? Okay. I got it. You guys are on your own. Second thing. Yes, second thing. I'm building a list of fanfiction requests. I've got a few things on here so far. I think there's one or two that might have come up over the last few weeks that I missed. I tried to go back and double check, but it's hard to find time to sit there and just scroll through emails. So if any of you have a request, shoot me a private message with it, so it'll be a little easier for me to sort through, and just let me know what it is. And if you could include a link to it, I'd really appreciate it, because there have been a few so far that I've had some trouble finding right away. So if you can find it for me and shoot me a link for it, I'll put it on the list. Once I get a little bit of a list built up, I'll kind of like organize it by what stories I like to do in what order. As always with bigger stories, they'll have to wait their turn. But with little like short one chapter kind of things, I can usually throw them in, sprinkle them in amongst the chapters of the longer stories. So there you go. And for those of you that have been keeping track, so far we've already done like adventure-y, romantic-y stories, and pure shameless clop fiction, and grimdark. So like really, I'm gonna say nothing's off limits at this point. No, I reserve the right to change that decision. Should you send me something and I read it and I'm just like, what the buck? Do you like that? I'm trying to make it popular. It's not catching on yet. So yeah, anyway, send me your requests. Now, sorry for wasting a bunch of time on the long introduction. But now, without any further ado, we begin chapter 5. And she said that I can help her with feeding the animals and looking after them, and Cherry had been talking non-stop since breakfast. They both had a slice of Pinky's cake, and while the cake was delicious, Lance hoped that he would be able to buy some proper food soon. All these sweets can't be too good for a pony's diet. They had just crossed a bridge over a small stream and were now walking along a well-kept dirt path, up a hill, that led towards a cottage that was so dressed up, it looked like it was just another part of the environment. The roof was covered in grass. There were at least a dozen birdhouses all over the house, and even more hanging from tall, thin trees along the pathway. There were also holes in the hill itself where lots of underground animals were nesting. Lance adjusted the saddlebags that he had on his back before raising a hoof and knocking gently on the door. Fluttershy answered the door seconds later.
"Oh, hello,"
Fluttershy said as she stepped back.
"Please come inside."
Oh. Alright, hopefully my voice will warm up a little bit. Cherry jumped ahead of Lance in front of Fluttershy.
"Hi, Fluttershy."
Cherry was super excited to see the yellow Pegasus again. Lance stepped in, walking around his little sister, who was half blocking the way in. "Good morning, Fluttershy," Lance said politely. "Thank you for inviting Cherry over. It's all she's been talking about all morning."
"Oh, that's all right. I've been looking forward to it,"
Fluttershy said with a smile.
Would you like some tea or a cold drink?"
It was a tempting offer, and all Lance had to drink that morning was some water from the tap. Thank you, but I have to be going. I just wanted to make sure that Cherry got here okay." Cherry was looking at the small birdhouse that was hanging from the ceiling. Small blue birds were flying in and out of it, gathering food from the bird feeders hanging just outside the open window. The entire house was full of small animals: mice, chipmunks, ferrets, and lots of others that Lance didn't recognize. The cottage was extremely well kept, considering all the animals walking along the furniture. Cherry jumped up to the window and looked out in the back.
Wow, Big Brother, look at this!
Cherry had shouted a little too loudly. The animals had fled and sunk away, hiding themselves back in their little homes.
Cherry, Lance cautioned, I know you're excited, but remember, you're a guest in Fluttershy's house and you're scaring the animals.
Cherry looked around and saw all the animals that were happily scurrying around and hidden away. Cherry slowly came down from the windowsill and then headed over to Fluttershy with her head hung low.
I'm sorry, Miss Fluttershy.
Cherry had, in a heartbeat, sunken back into her shell and was again shy and quiet. Not making any eye contact, Fluttershy walked over to Cherry and lifted her face up with a hoof.
That's okay, sweetie. Now why don't you worry... There.
Excuse me.
That's okay, sweetie. Now don't you worry about it, okay?
Lance could tell that Fluttershy had experience talking to children. Or maybe she just spent so much time talking to animals that she was a natural at being comforting. Cherry smiled at Fluttershy. Well, I've got to head off, said Lance. Cherry, you behave yourself and do everything Fluttershy tells you, okay? Cherry nodded. Good. Lance walked over to Cherry and gave her a quick hug. I'll be back later. Thank you again, Fluttershy. Fluttershy nodded and smiled back to Lance.
That's okay, Mr. Angelswift. It's my pleasure, really.
Please, call me Lance. Lance smiled back to her.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lance.
Fluttershy had gone quiet again. Is she like this around every pony, or do I just seem intimidating to her? Well, I'm gonna go now. Bye. Be good, Lance said to his little sister before waving a hoof and then walking out the door. Cherry waved and said goodbye as she watched her brother leave. Lance shut the door behind himself and took a deep breath of the cool spring air. Fluttershy sure did live in a much nicer area. He hoped maybe he could beautify his home like this soon after he'd finally gotten a job. Lance had reached the market, and it was a very busy morning. Ponies from all over Ponyville were shopping for their weekly supplies. They all had their saddlebags full of fruits, vegetables, jams, and other items like pots and pans. Seems like this was the place you could buy just about anything you ever needed. Lance walked over to the first stall he saw. A mare with a light yellow coat, green eyeshadow, and a brown curly mane was selling tomatoes. Yeah, what can I get for you? She said, sounding bored. Hi, I just moved to Ponyville and I was wondering if you needed any workers. Maybe someone who can... The mayor cut him off.
Listen, Sonny. I don't need no more workers back at the greenhouses. My kids pick 'em, I sell 'em. I don't employ people. Unless you're buying, I suggest you move along.
The mayor gave a look to Lance that screamed, "Get lost." Lance moved away without another word. He then approached the next market stall. There was a gray stallion with an orange mane behind the stall selling pears. "How do, friend? What can I do for you?" the pony said with a smile. Hello, said Lance. I'm new in town and I'm looking for work. I was wondering... But Lance was again interrupted. Wait, ain't you that new fella that Pinky had that party for yesterday? That's living near the old forest? Said the sales pony. Well, yes, I'm... Well, tain't much I can help you with, said the sales pony in a rush. Afraid we got all the help we need back home. You best just move along. Good day. Lance looked down and then looked back up to meet the stallion's eyes. Okay, well, thank you for your time. Lance walked away. What was that about? He seemed fine till he... Lance realized that the pony only got flustered after recognizing him. Were the ponies really so paranoid that they wouldn't even talk to a pony who lives near it? This turned out to be mostly true. Most of the ponies were quick to make up excuses to get Lance away from their stalls, and one pony even turned hostile, shouting and telling him to leave, or else. Lance couldn't believe it. The ponies in this town thought he was cursed or something. The ivory-colored pony walked with his head hung low, avoiding a few stares he was getting. Get your delicious and nutritious apples here. Lance looked up and saw he was walking past a sales pony he hadn't been to yet. an orange mare wearing a brown cow pony hat over her blonde mane, tied back in a ponytail. She was in front of an apple cart full to the brim with delicious-looking apples. Lance headed over to her as she greeted him with a smile. "Well, howdy do there, mister. Name's Applejack. What can I do you for?" Applejack asked. "Hello," Lance said politely. "My name's Lance Angelswift. I'm new to Ponyville, and I'm looking for a job." Applejack didn't lose her smile, but her eyes said the same story everyone else's did. "Well, I'd like to help you out and all, but I'm afraid that we don't really need any help over at Sweet Apple Acres." Lance hung his head low. Applejack saw the rejected look on his face and couldn't help feeling guilty. "But, look, we've got cider season coming up soon, and I reckon we sure could use the help then." Lance looked back up to Applejack. "That's very kind, but that still doesn't help me and my sister survive until then," Lance said, sounding depressed. "Y'all have a little sister?" Applejack asked, concerned. "Yeah, she's being looked after by a friend at the moment," Lance said. "But I've tried every market stall and every pony rejects me. Most of the time I could tell they were lying and just wanted to get rid of me, but... Well, thank you for your honesty." Lance turned to walk away. "Now, hold on there." Applejack stopped him. "Now look, I really can't offer you no job, but if you keep looking, there's bound to be one somewhere. Don't give up. And here, take some of these with you." Applejack took a small bag of apples and placed them into Lance's saddlebag. Lance smiled up at Applejack. "Oh, no, I couldn't possibly..." "Now don't you fret. These here are on the house." "That's very kind of you. Thank you." "And remember, you've always got friends up at Sweet Apple Acres. You should drop by sometime once you get settled in. And bring your sister. I'm sure she'd get on well with Apple Bloom, my little sis." Applejack seemed like a really nice pony. Lance thanked her again and promised to take her up on the offer one day. Lance walked away, waving a hoof. His spirits lifted higher now that he'd made a new friend, but if she knew about where he lived, would she have given him such a warm reception? The free apples that Applejack had given him weighed heavily in his saddlebags. Then he remembered. Oh, the letters. Lance had the letters in his saddlebags, and he wanted to take them to the local post office. He didn't know if it would do any good. Most of the letters were years old, but some were recent, though it did seem like there hadn't been any post from the past few weeks. Lance assumed that maybe the mail pony just simply stopped coming by the house, seeing as how terrified every pony was of it. Lance headed through the town and eventually reached the Ponyville post office. He walked inside and was quite surprised. It was empty. The floor was dirty. The rope that you would have ponies stand behind while waiting in line was lying on the floor. It was like no pony cared. There was a pony behind the counter, but she looked like she was asleep. Lance walked up to her. Excuse me," Lance said to the old blue mare behind the counter. Her gray mane was a mess, and she wore thin half-moon spectacles. She woke with a snort, then looked up at Lance, blinking a few times trying to get her eyes to adjust. Sorry. Yes, dear, what can I help you with?" Hello, I've got some letters here that..." The old mare jumped up from her seat. "Oh, really? Well, then, hand them over and we'll get them all done for you." She held out her hooves expectantly. Lance felt like the post office never got customers anymore. "Well, the thing is..." Lance hesitated, then pulled out 2 stacks of letters. The first stack was made up of letters that were less than 6 months old. The second, much larger stack was held together by string. These letters were much older than 6 months, many going back several years. "These letters were all delivered to my house mistakenly over the years. I wasn't sure what to do with them, so I've brought them back here." The old mare lowered her hooves, losing the smile from her face. "I see. Well, just leave them on the counter, then." She looked so crestfallen as she sat back down. Just then the door behind the counter, from behind her, slammed open, making Lance jump, but the old mare just seemed to ignore it. "Penny!" A brown Pegasus stallion burst into the room. He looked a mess. His black mane looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. In fact, he looked like he hadn't been washed in weeks. He had rough facial hair all around his muzzle. He looked slightly overweight, and he sounded very rough. "I told you I wanted my coffee 20 minutes ago. Where's..." The stallion stopped mid-sentence when he saw another pony in the room.
Who the feather are you?
I... Lance stammered. He's just come by to return misdelivered letters, the old mare said, sounding bored.
Oh, really?
The Pegasus sounded annoyed.
Well, let me tell you something, young colt. We don't give a hoof about giving rewards or compensation for you taking your precious time having to come all the way out here to return these damned letters.
The Pegasus's temper was rising. Wait, rewards? No, I just... Lance started, but wasn't heard as the stallion kept shooting off at the mouth.
And you think this is easy? Delivering hundreds of letters when no other ponies will help?
Lance gave a look to the old mare. She was just sitting there, looking down.
And all you ponies want to do is complain. None of you ever take the time to help. I'm constantly stuck with you small-brained parasprites that come to me that cause me nothing but trouble.
Lance took a few steps back. What was this pony's problem?
And with the male ponies constantly quitting on us, we're stuck with the complaints from little foals like you complaining about, oh, I never got my letter, and I'm fed up with it.
The Pegasus's impression of little Philly wasn't very flattering. Lance had to stop him. Now look here. I've done nothing to provoke this. I just moved to Ponyville yesterday. My home was full of letters mailed to the wrong address, and I brought them back here. I'm not looking for any reward. I just did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. Lance met the Pegasus's cold stare, neither of them blinking.
Well, the little Colt Scout has done his good deed for the day. Well, you might as well forget it. These letters aren't ever getting delivered. The last mail pony quit weeks ago, and no one else will take the damn job.
I can't imagine why, the old mare said quietly, rolling her eyes. Maybe some pony would take the job if you didn't shout at every pony that came in here, Lance said as the Pegasus turned his back to him.
Well, I don't see you volunteering for the job.
Well, Lance didn't like this stallion. He was rude, a bully, a jerk, but Lance was desperate. Maybe I am. The stallion spun around on the spot.
You serious?
Yeah. Lance stepped up to the counter. Look, I need a job, and you clearly need a male pony. The Pegasus looked Lance up and down.
What's wrong with you?
The Pegasus asked suspiciously. Excuse me? Lance replied, offended.
Every male pony over the years has had something wrong with them. That derpy mare, that nearsighted foal. What's your problem?
Lance really didn't like this stallion. Nothing. I'm exactly what you see. The Pegasus huffed, then flew over to a small door, opening it.
Get in here. Let's talk.
Lance was wearing his new blue male pony jacket along with a small blue hat. He had been given a not-so-simple task of delivering all the letters that he himself had brought back in, and there was also another task. I have to what? Lance said, stunned. He was in the office with his soon-to-be boss.
You have to go to each house, knock on their door, hand them their mail, and then tell them that you're sorry for all the issues that Pony Post has had over the years, and that changes are being made to its staff members. All male ponies are going under training to ensure that they are competent enough to deliver the mail.
The Pegasus sat behind his desk with a cigar in his mouth. He seemed pleased with the idea. You're gonna make me, the male pony, look the fool to try and get the post office off the hook? Lance said.
Quick as a whip, kid.
The brown stallion blew out a puff of smoke. The room stank of it. This is... Lance was quickly interrupted.
I hate this as much as you do.
The Pegasus clearly lied.
But the company is losing money fast, and we need to get the money up. I hate this place, but I ain't letting it go under.
If you hate this place, why don't you quit? Lance asked, not hiding his dislike for the Pegasus very well. The stallion then jumped up.
Are you kidding me?
He turned and pointed at the cutie mark on his flank. It was an envelope with a pair of legs.
With a cutie mark like this and my parents calling me Post Pony Pete? How could I be anything else?
Lance had an understanding now as to why Post Pony Pete was angry all the time. His entire life he'd been pushed into something that maybe he didn't want to be. Lance stared back at his own cutie mark. A shield. Lance believed it was his destiny to be a Camelot Royal Guard. Since getting his mark, it's all he dreamed of. But was that his dream or what he thought he had to be? Lance had been to a few houses already, delivered their mail, and, although he hated it, apologized for the mail pony's failures of the past, and from this day forward they would be undergo special training. Lance knew there would be no training, but if there was, it would be stuff like learning to read addresses. It was humiliating to let the ponies of Ponyville think he was an idiot. Lance came to a small house with gray walls and a straw roof. Lance knocked on the door and stood back. The door was answered by a light brown stain with a dark brown mane that was brushed backwards behind his head, yet still remained a little spiky. Okay, I'm gonna make an effort at this. I know some of you fans out there are gonna hate how bad of an impression this is, but I'm gonna try it. So here we go. Hello there, the brown pony said. Good afternoon, said Lance. I have a letter here for the doctor? Ah, yes, that's me. Lance pulled the letter from the mailbag and handed it over. Lance noticed it said on the front, open immediately. The letter was old from the look of it, so whatever was in there is most likely not going to be of any use, just like most of the old letters. The doctor took it and then said, with the letter in his mouth, Huh, hey, that's strange. The doctor began opening the letter, and Lance began his forced apology. Sir, on behalf of the Ponyville post office, I'd like to apologize. While Lance was making the same apology for what felt like the 1,000th time that day, the doctor had opened the letter and began reading it. His eyes shot open, and then he grabbed Lance and pulled him to the floor. Lance was surprised and instantly lost his balance, falling face down on the floor. Lance noticed the doctor was lying over him, and before he could ask what he was doing, there was a loud explosion from inside the house, and a large object flew over both their heads, landing in the garden with a loud metallic clang. Lance took a peek and saw the smoking front of an oven door. Oops, my bad, Amir called out from inside the kitchen. The doctor got off of Lance and then called back into the kitchen. Derpy, are you okay in there? The doctor sounded only half concerned, like this happens all the time. Yeah, and the muffins are ready, the voice called from the kitchen. Ah, splendid. Would you care to join us, Lance? The doctor offered a hoof and helped Lance back up. No, thank you. Lance then realized. Wait, how'd you know my name? He asked, curious. Oh, it was in the letter you sent me. The doctor showed Lance the letter. Dear Doctor, grab Lance and duck. Love, the doctor. P.S. Isn't that face priceless? Lance looked up and the doctor started laughing. Yes, it certainly is. Wait, what? Lance's mind was completely fried. Who wrote that letter? How did they know it was going to happen? The letter was written months ago. What in the hay is going on? The doctor patted Lance on the shoulder. Relax, my fine fellow. I'm sure you'll learn the truth someday. Or not. Now, come have some of Derpy's delicious muffins. Lance couldn't think of any response. A near-death experience, a letter from the future, or the past. Nothing made sense. And she has squirrels and cats and a pink flamingo, and she let me feed her chickens, and... Much like the journey to Fluttershy's house this morning, Cherry was talking non-stop as they left it. Lance was exhausted. He'd walked all around Ponyville and met just about all its citizens, including a few unfriendly faces he'd met at the market this morning. But at least he'd gotten to meet a few nice ponies. The doctor and Derpy were two of the strangest ponies he'd met since Pinkie Pie, but they were very friendly, even if Derpy was a bit... ditzy. Lance found out that Derpy was the former male pony herself before she quit to become the doctor's assistant. The doctor never told Lance his name, always insisted it was the doctor. Lance expected him to have a doctor's cutie mark, just like Post Pony Pete had a cutie mark of a running envelope, but instead he had an hourglass. What kind of special talent is that? Does he always know the time? Lance never asked. He'd finished delivering all the mail and returned to the post office. Pete had gone home early, but he left the old mare, Penny, and with Lance's pay for the day. Lance had swapped his mailbag for his saddlebag before leaving and noticed that a few of the apples that Applejack had given him were missing, leaving only 3. He'd ask Pete about this tomorrow morning. Lance and Cherry reached their house just as the sun was setting and the moon was ready to rise into the sky. Lance and Cherry had an apple each for dinner that night, then another slice of cake for dessert. Lance had some bits now, and a job. Tomorrow he'd be able to buy some proper food and a lot more necessities. Cherry was also smiling a lot more and talking constantly about Fluttershy and her animals. Things were starting to look up for them both. That is the end of chapter 5. So, more of a feel-good, a little bit of a chuckle kind of chapter. I love the Doctor reference. I hate that I can't do a decent... in fairness, I'm not sure what the correct term would be for the kind of accent that particular Doctor had. So... Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll re-record this chapter and try to pester Nevel into sitting in for that piece, because I think he'd sound perfect for that. Anyway, so like I said, pretty good, feel-good chapter. Lighten the mood a little bit. Unfortunately, it's already getting pretty late, and I've got a long day tomorrow, so I'm going to have to go ahead and call it a night. But to quickly reiterate, because I can, if you have any requests for stories, long or short, shoot them to me in a private message so that I can keep track of them a little easier, and I'm working on building a list, and then we'll go from there. And thank you all for listening. So I will see you next time.